The day it happened was one of those blistering hot afternoons where everything felt slower, except the judgment. It was a Wednesday, just after the lunch rush at a mid-tier diner in the city's arts district. The kind of place that tried to look vintage but couldn't hide the smell of old grease and desperation. Nobody expected what would unfold there that day. Not the regulars, not the staff, and definitely not the young man who quietly walked in wearing a tattered hoodie, faded jeans, and worn-out sneakers, the laces on one foot dragging behind him like a dead limb. The moment he stepped inside, it felt like something shifted in the air, even if no one could put a name to it yet. He sat at the farthest booth, away from the windows, like he was trying not to be noticed. But he was. The waitress on shift that day, a woman named Karen, yeah, ironic, locked eyes on him the second he came in. Blonde ponytail, harsh lipstick, too tight uniform shirt with a name tag she probably thought made her look important. Karen had been working at that diner too long enough to believe she owned it, even if her paycheck said otherwise. She strutted over to him with that forced customer service smile already cracking at the corners. He barely looked up when she asked for his order, just pointed to the cheapest thing on the menu, a bowl of chili and a glass of tap water. "That all?" she asked, voice high-pitched and sharp. He nodded. "You sure you can afford it?" she added, a little louder this time. A few heads turned. He didn't answer, just kept looking down at his hands like he hadn't heard her. That only annoyed her more. She gave him a once-over and scoffed before walking back to the counter, mumbling something under her breath about bums wasting seats. She didn't bother hiding her disgust as she loudly told the cook not to worry too much about the presentation. The chili came out in a chipped bowl, cold in the middle. The glass of water was warm. He said nothing, just ate quietly, slowly, like each bite meant more than just food. When the bill came, it was scrawled in pen, total circled 3 times like a warning. Karen hovered nearby, arms crossed, waiting. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a crumpled $5 bill and some coins. Not quite enough. "You're short," she snapped. "Figures." He apologized softly, offered to wash dishes, even clean the bathroom if it would help. She laughed so loud it bounced off the walls. "You think I'm gonna let some broke nobody touch anything back there? What is this, a charity?" She called him a freeloader, told him to take his pity act somewhere else. The manager, who didn't see what happened but trusted Karen, told him to leave or they'd call security. He did, quietly, no scene, no words. Just that same slow walk out the door, laces still dragging. What no one noticed, except one silent old man at the bar, was the black notebook the young man left behind on the booth seat. No name on the cover, just a single symbol, a fork and flame. The old man picked it up but didn't say anything, just slipped it into his coat. A week passed, then a month, and by the time the seasons turned and the diner's broken AC gave up entirely, something strange started happening in the neighborhood. A new building went up across the street. Fast, too fast. The windows were blacked out. The workers were tight-lipped. Rumors spread like wildfire. Some said it was going to be a pop-up restaurant. Others whispered it was backed by some tech billionaire who wanted to experiment with food algorithms. But no one knew for sure. Karen didn't care. She barely noticed. She was too busy posting Instagram stories about fake customers trying to scam their way into free food and complaining to anyone who'd listen about her aching feet and ungrateful clientele. Until one morning, the diner's windows rattled from the sound of laughter and construction being torn down. The new place had opened overnight, just a single sign above the door. Ember, in gold. The line outside was ridiculous. Celebrities, food bloggers, business moguls. People who'd never stepped foot near that neighborhood before were suddenly standing in line for hours. Karen saw it all from the window as she scrubbed ketchup off a sticky table, jaw tightening. But it wasn't until she caught a glimpse of the new owner through the glass doors of Ember that her heart dropped into her stomach. It was him. The same guy, same posture, same eyes. But now he wore a tailored black chef's coat with the same fork and flame emblem stitched into the sleeve, the same symbol from the notebook. He didn't look at her, not then. But she looked at him, couldn't stop. She didn't believe it at first. Googled the restaurant out of spite, and found everything. Articles praising his revolutionary fusion cuisine. A viral video of him feeding the homeless outside Ember every night. A profile on him in Forbes about his journey from homelessness to hospitality icon in just a few months. It didn't make sense. None of it made sense. How does someone go from begging to billion-dollar backing in less than a season? Then came the blow that knocked the wind out of her. The diner was shutting down. Lease pulled. Building bought. Owner refused to say who the buyer was. But Karen didn't need to guess. The view from her counter confirmed it. Ember now owned the block. She begged the manager to help her get another job. He just shrugged. "Place across the street's hiring," he said with a smirk. She laughed, but it was hollow. That night, dressed in her cleanest uniform and makeup caked to cover the panic, she crossed the street for the first time. The line parted as she walked up, ignored. At the front, a sharply dressed hostess glanced at her, eyes scanning her face like a barcode. "Reservation?" she asked. "No," Karen whispered. "I'm here to apply." The hostess raised an eyebrow. "You're not on the list." "I know the owner," Karen blurted out, desperate. And then, finally, he appeared. Walking from the back, silent, graceful, face unreadable. He stopped just a few feet away, looked her up and down. She tried to smile. "Hey, you remember me, right?" He didn't answer. She stumbled over her words. "Look, I know things were rough that day. I was having a bad shift. I didn't know you were..." He finally spoke, voice calm. "You didn't know I mattered." Silence. "I'm not that person anymore," she said. "Please, I need this." His eyes narrowed, but instead of responding, he turned and walked away, leaving the hostess to stare at her with a faint, knowing smirk. But then something happened the next morning that no one could have predicted. A viral video surfaced. Security footage, grainy but clear. Dated from the day she humiliated him. It showed her mocking him, gesturing wildly, laughing with another server while pointing at his back as he left. The comments were brutal. The public was merciless. And Ember's socials exploded. Not in hate, but in curiosity. Because that same day, the restaurant posted a cryptic announcement. "We believe in second chances, but some lessons must be earned." That's when the rumors began again. Some said he offered her a job, but only if she started from the very bottom, washing dishes, in silence, for weeks. Others claimed he was setting up a new project, one where ex-restaurant workers had to re-earn their stripes by living like those they once looked down on. And some believed she was being given one final test, one final opportunity, but only if she was willing to sacrifice something bigger than pride. Whatever the truth is, no one knows yet. Because just yesterday she was spotted again, this time wearing a black apron with the Ember logo, stepping into the back alley where the kitchen staff takes their breaks. Her face was pale, eyes sunken, like someone who hadn't slept in days. And beside her was the old man from the diner bar, holding the black notebook she once mocked, still silent, still watching. And what's written in that notebook may be the key to everything. The alley behind Ember was always dim, no matter the time of day. Something about the way the buildings leaned in, like they were trying to keep secrets from the sky. The air smelled of fire-roasted garlic and ambition, a scent that wrapped itself around anyone who dared step behind the curtain of perfection the restaurant presented out front. Karen stood near the dumpsters, clutching the thin black apron they'd given her. No name tag, no title, just the logo, fork, and flame. sewn like a brand on her chest. She hadn't spoken since her shift started at dawn. No one asked her to. No one even acknowledged her. She was invisible now, exactly the way she'd treated him that day. The only person who gave her more than a passing glance was the old man. He didn't work there, not technically, but he was always around, sweeping, checking supplies, leaning in dark corners with that damn notebook pressed to his chest like it held commandments. She didn't know his name, didn't know why he watched her so closely. Only that when their eyes met, he knew. The shame never left her, not in the steam of the dish pit, not when her hands turned raw from scrubbing pans, not when she overheard the line cooks laughing at her behind her back. She knew she deserved it, knew she had it coming. But that didn't make it easier. The restaurant itself was a machine, smooth, precise, terrifying in its efficiency. Ember wasn't like other places. It was theatrical. Tables didn't just get served, they got stories, curated experiences. Dishes arrived like acts in a play, narrated by servers who knew the origin of every spice, the history of every protein. It was more temple than kitchen. And the man at the center of it, the owner she once called a freeloader, moved through it like a ghost of fire and vengeance. He never said her name, never looked her way in front of others. But she felt him, every day. In the silence, in the way her tasks seemed to stretch longer than anyone else's, in the way her every mistake echoed louder. He was rebuilding her, one shameful second at a time. She considered quitting every night, but she didn't, because she couldn't. There were whispers that he was giving her a shot, that if she lasted 30 days in silence, she'd get a second chance. But others said it was a game, that he enjoyed watching her sink, that she was a warning to anyone else who ever thought they were too good to be kind. The tipping point came on a Saturday. It was an unusually slow day. Rain tapped at the windows. A reservation had canceled. Karen was told to sweep the front, something normally reserved for the youngest servers. As she stepped into the dining area, a child's laugh caught her off guard. There was a boy, maybe 10 years old, sitting at a table with an older woman. They were sharing dessert. The boy waved at Karen. "You look tired," he said, not with malice but concern. Karen smiled faintly. "I am." "Then why do you work here?" he asked innocently. Before she could answer, the woman leaned forward. "That's enough, Eli." But Eli wasn't done. "He talks about you sometimes." Karen's breath caught. "Who?" "The owner. He says everyone deserves a chance to be more than their worst day." The woman shushed him again, pulled him close. But Karen had already frozen in place. She finished sweeping and went straight to the alley, heart pounding. The old man was there again, crouched near a milk crate, flipping through the black notebook. The rain had dampened the edges of the pages, but he didn't seem to care. Karen finally spoke. "Is it true?" He didn't look up. "Depends what you mean." "About the 30 days. He turned a page slowly. "He didn't make it official, but you're on day 29. Her heart fluttered. "So what happens tomorrow?" The old man closed the book. "You stop hiding." She blinked. "Hiding? You think scrubbing dishes in silence makes you better, but that's not penance, that's retreat. The question isn't whether he'll forgive you. It's whether you'll ever forgive yourself loud enough for the world to hear it." She didn't know how to respond. The next morning came too fast. She was called into the main kitchen. The head chef, a towering woman named Raina with tattoos up both arms, told her to put on a server's uniform. No explanation, no emotion. Karen dressed in silence, hands trembling. It felt surreal, like she was being marched to a public execution. She stepped out of the back and into the front of house for the first time since that awful day at the diner. And there he was, standing at the head of the private dining room, dressed in that same black chef's coat, sleeves rolled just high enough to reveal burn scars and strength. The staff stood silently behind him. The room was empty except for a single table in the center, lit by a warm amber pendant light. "Karen," he said for the first time, "take the order." She stepped forward. Seated at the table was a woman in her 40s, thin-framed glasses, a stack of paperwork beside her. She didn't look up, just spoke. "I'll have whatever the chef recommends." Karen scribbled it down, handed it to the kitchen, then returned and stood like a statue. He was watching her, judging, waiting. Dish by dish, the food arrived: art on ceramic, smoked duck breast with pomegranate glaze, braised short ribs with harissa, each one delivered with practiced precision by someone else, until dessert. He nodded at Karen. She carried the final plate with shaking hands. Dark chocolate mousse dusted with sea salt, paired with burnt orange marmalade. She placed it gently before the woman. "Thank you," the woman said, finally looking up. Karen gasped. It was her mother. Same hair, same stern eyes. The woman who had told her to work harder, be tougher, never show weakness. The same woman who, when Karen had cried after her first firing, had said, "Maybe next time don't act like you're better than everyone." She hadn't spoken to her in 4 years. Karen stepped back. Why is she here?" The chef, her former victim, stepped forward. "Because this isn't about me anymore." He nodded to the staff, who quietly exited the room. Only 3 people remained. He looked at Karen, voice calm. "You humiliated me because you thought I was beneath you, because someone once told you survival means stepping on others before they step on you. But that story doesn't belong to you anymore. You're not that version of yourself now." Karen turned to her mother, whose eyes filled with something almost human. Regret, maybe, or confusion. "I didn't know you were working here," she said softly. "I didn't want you to," Karen replied. "I wanted to earn something on my own." Her mother lowered her eyes. The chef stepped between them. "This restaurant isn't built on revenge. It's built on redemption. You don't owe me anything anymore, Karen. But if you want to stay, if you want to really be part of this family, then stop running from what made you cruel." Karen's eyes burned. Her throat tightened. He handed her something. It was the notebook. She opened it for the first time. Inside weren't recipes. They were journal entries, moments he remembered from being homeless, notes about people who helped, and pages dedicated to people who didn't. But her name was never written. She looked up at him, stunned. "I didn't need to write it down," he said. "I knew you'd find your own way here." He turned to walk away, but she wasn't done. "Wait." He stopped. "I want to stay." "Then tomorrow you start at the front, uniform, name tag, training." She nodded, but her voice cracked. "And after that?" He smiled faintly. "You'll tell your story." The next day, Karen was behind the hostess stand, greeting guests, eyes wide with nerves but heart steady. She wore the Ember uniform like armor now, not shame. Week by week, she grew. She learned every dish, every wine pairing, every story behind the food. And then, one night, she was told to host the final course for a private VIP dinner. She stepped into the spotlight, nerves threatening to consume her. But when she looked around, every table was filled with people who had once been like her. Former servers, former addicts, people who were once lost, now found inside Ember's fire. She cleared her throat. "I used to believe kindness was a weakness, that survival meant making yourself harder than the world. But I was wrong, because real strength is making room at your table for people you once ignored." Applause erupted. She locked eyes with him in the back. He nodded once, then disappeared into the kitchen like a shadow in the flame. Karen didn't see him again for weeks. Until one night, the restaurant shut down unexpectedly early. Staff gathered in the alley, confused. And there he stood, with suitcases, and the old man by his side. "I'm opening a second location," he announced. "In Paris." Everyone murmured, shocked, excited. Karen stepped forward. "Who's running Ember here?" He smiled. "You are." Silence. "No," she whispered. "I'm not ready." He stepped closer. "You've been ready since the day you stopped hiding." She looked at the black notebook he handed her again, now with one final page blank. "For your story," he said. "Make it worth the flame." And just like that, he was gone. Karen stood in the alley. Same cracked pavement, same rain-soaked bricks, but everything had changed. From humiliation to leadership, from shame to legacy. Ember wasn't just a restaurant anymore. It was hers. And the next chapter, she'd write it herself.